One thing that all teachers who engage in case teaching want to know about is what makes a case study work in class. What is it that appeals to the students when you're teaching a case study? Based on my experience of teaching cases to students at different levels, undergraduates, graduates and executives, I found that one essential component of case teaching is the preparation that goes on before you come to class. This holds both for the teacher as well as for the students. But cases being about 15 to 20 pages long, it is difficult to force the students to read them. But unless they read those cases, there cannot be a lively discussion in class. So what do you do about that? One way to enhance the students' preparation for the class is to give them some discussion questions. Oftentimes students find themselves faced with a lot of reading, with no structure, and they don't know which is important, which is not. The discussion questions often help them to streamline their thought process and think about the case in a specific way. So for students who are new to the case method of teaching, we find the discussion questions to be quite helpful in preparing for the class. Secondly, it has to be kept in mind that the main goal of a case teacher is not to lecture about something. You are basically acting as a facilitator for facilitating the discussions that are happening in the class. But one problem that you have with that is oftentimes the discussion doesn't go in the track that you want the discussion to go. So you have to kind of guard yourself and make sure that the discussion is progressing in the right direction that you want it to proceed. And students may need some help from you as a facilitator to make the discussion go in the right direction. So your role as a case facilitator is very important for steering the discussion in the right direction. And also to raise questions from time to time so that the students actually can think in the proper direction and the case moves on during the class. The third important thing that I find is useful to do during case teaching is to give a summary of what has happened so far. A case usually will have several inflection points while the discussion of the issues is going on. And at each inflection point which you think is important for the case, I think you could come forward and provide a summary of what has happened in the past so that the students can keep these items in their mind as they move on to the next issue in the case. And also at the end of the case discussion, it is definitely a responsibility of the case teacher to summarize the entire case and tell them what lessons have been learned, what decisions we have arrived at, how we came to those decisions, and also to link it with the teaching objectives that you had for this class. So any specific concept that you wanted to teach in the class, how did this case relate to that specific concept? If you can highlight that, the students will really appreciate that. An important point about the case teaching, and perhaps one of the most important ones, is to provide a feedback about the case learning that has happened in the class. So where does the students need this feedback? One feedback is about the presentations. If you're asking the students to do short presentations about certain topics about the case in the class, you need to evaluate them and give them feedback about what they covered, how they covered, whether it was good or not, whether it was appropriate or not, like that. And also, in most cases, professors ask the students to submit case write-ups. So it is also important that you provide a feedback on this write-up about the analysis that they did and give it to them as soon as possible while the case discussion remains fresh in their mind. So in a sense, you can see that as a case teacher, you need to emphasize preparation. You also need to emphasize the facilitation, and you need to emphasize that there is a summary that is given at different points of time during the case discussion. And finally, the most important point is giving feedback to the students to ensure that the learning is taking place in the right direction.